What's up, Hyperdrivers? Episode 6 of Andor is out, and wow, did I have a great time watching this one. It's full of high-tension moments, action, and consequence as we finally get to see this heist play out. Seriously, this episode kept me on my toes the whole way through, and the special effects and cinematography rivals even the big picture films. Before we dive in, if you enjoy the Star Wars content that I put out on this channel weekly, please like, subscribe, and ding that bell so you can jump to Lightspeed every week with us right here on the Hyperdrive. This episode is titled The Eye because the celestial event that occurs during the show, but also because Cassian and the team are going through with the heist, and much like a heist movie, it never goes as planned. So just like being in the eye of the storm, there is no turning back and they have to see it through. The episode kicks off the morning of the heist. Nemik is stressed and can't sleep. He's worried about the mission to come and worried that since he hasn't slept, he's going to be tired and not doing his best on the mission. Nemik does say something pretty interesting here about the role of mercenaries in the galactic struggle for freedom, referring to Cassian since he let out in the last episode that he was hired to do the mission. Nemik concludes that mercenaries are essentially weapons that they should use to the best of their advantage because the Empire would do the same if need be. In this way they can show the Empire that the insurgency adapts to their tactics. But Cassian only partially agrees with him. He does agree that the Empire doesn't play by the rules, but he says that the Empire doesn't even care about their tactics or their adaptation to their fighting style. They just don't even care about who they are. They don't even know who they are. To them, the insurgency, the Rebel Alliance, everybody is just a footnote in the Empire story. At this point, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking Nemik is totally going to die, and that's what's going to give Cassian the push. I was at least right about one thing. Next, we catch up with Lieutenant Gorn, who's overhearing Commander Behaz discuss with Colonel Pettigar, an Imperial engineer, about the Aldani people. I really like how this conversation they're having mirrors society today, right? How rather than to force the Aldani people to do what they want, they instead offer choices to keep some of the people wrapped up into making decisions that they fail to notice the bigger picture that's going on around them. Much like how we're bombarded with ads and other distractions to keep us from focusing on the bigger problems that are going on today. It's sad to see the Aldani people make this journey up, not knowing that this will be the last time they'll ever get to witness the celestial event in person. It's hard to imagine what Gorn was actually feeling in this scene, having to listen to this guy and pretend to be the loyal soldier. That final moment in this scene though, where the Imperial officers are looking out full of pride and Gorn in the back giving him the death stare, that was priceless. Next, we're back at the team on their way to their start positions of the mission. Cinta and Vel are already at their checkpoint, but as they're on their way, Skeen tells Cassian that Terramin was a former stormtrooper. And not just that, but they slaughtered Cinta's entire family. Not sure if Terramin was actually a part of that. It could have been another battalion of stormtroopers, but still, that must have been a tough pill for Cinta to swallow. When Terramin, Skeen, Nemik, and Cassian make it to the checkpoint, Terramin goes over the cover and explains how the Aldani people that have made it this far have a strong hate for the Empire. So the team really needs to keep their cool and not engage anyone. This scene has some great tension and cross-cutting as we see the Aldani people come up on the team posing as the troopers, and then we cut to the scene where the band of troopers just happen to come across where Vel and Cinta are hiding. We then cut back to Commander Behaz, who's having a difficult time putting on his belt. It's great how he tells his wife to let the boy dress himself because he's old enough, but he needs help. Also, he thinks that his sash is shrunken, placing full blame on his wife because it was stored improperly. Robata then says, well, perhaps you've expanded. We thought that was great. I love that. Just showing more how this guy is gorged and become comfortable in his seat of power that he doesn't even fit in his clothes anymore. Next, we cut back to Lieutenant Gorn as the Aldani people arrive along with their escorts, which includes Cassian and the team. We get a quick shot of another soldier who's looking at the team, questioning who they are. I really thought that the cover was going to get blown here, or they were going to elaborate more on that, but it never happened. Gorn, having been on the planet for the past 7 years and falling in love with one of the Aldani people, has actually learned the language. But the Aldani leader is not impressed by this at all. To him, he's just another Imperial. And now is where the mission really begins. We see Cinta and Vel make their way underwater because, all good heist movies have a good underwater aspect to it. Meanwhile, Gorn shows up to the commander's apartment with a goat hide to give to the Aldani people for a 3-year lease of the land. Got to say that's pretty cheap, especially since the Aldani people just give a goat hide right back to him, so I can't figure out where the payment is going on there. You can see that both the commander and the colonel are disgusted by the smell, but Gorn has become used to it. We cut back to the team where Terramin is worried because Vel has not checked in yet. There's a corporal waiting outside, and that's really what's keeping Vel and Cinta from checking in and reaching their first objective. The corporal eventually goes back into the office, which allows Vel to install the jamming device. At the same time, the commander is presenting the goat skin to the Aldani leader. Now, Vel is having some issues here. She's having second thoughts about actually going through with the mission. But Cinta, on the other hand, is cold and ready. Vel looks like she may back out, but she eventually goes through with it. We cut back to the Aldani leader where he says that their ghosts have strong hands and long memories. Kind of a callback for me to the last episode, The Tree Remembers. It's just saying that they will remember everything that the Empire has done. Lieutenant Gorn lies to the commander about the translation, which I feel that the Aldani leader recognizes because he kind of gives him that look like, what? You know? But he just lets it go. I figure maybe he just says, screw it, just get these imps out of my sight. I do really like the music that's playing in the background of the scene though, and throughout the whole entire episode. It's got a lot of great tension, a lot of action to it. I really dig it. Vel and Cinta make the leap over the wall, all Mission Impossible style. Meanwhile, now that the Imperial officers are gone, the Aldani leader burns the goat skin that they were given. I really love a good FU moment, and this is one of them. Once everyone is in the base, the team immediately takes over, disarming the guard and taking the commander and his family hostage. The colonel isn't having it though. He points his gun at Nemik, and I was totally thinking, here it comes! But alas, Nemik makes it past this checkpoint at least. The commander asks the colonel to drop his weapon since Skeen has a gun to his kid's head, but just before anything kicks off, Cinta shoots the colonel in the back. Cinta is a badass. Like, zero shits given on this scene. It's crazy how the scene plays out. If you only saw this scene alone, you would think that the Imperials were the good guys and the insurgents were actually terrorists. The acting is on point. As Cassian, Terramin, and the commander take the elevator up to the command tower, the jamming signal kicks in, effectively shutting down communication for the Imperials. So far, so good. After they take out everybody on the command tower, Vel and the rest of the team as well as the hostages go up to the watchtower and take over. Here we get a quick shot of Vel and Cinta, and you can see that they're in a relationship. Vel asks Cinta if she'll be alright since she'll be left alone at the tower. I was for sure this was going to be a death sentence for Cinta, but again, I was wrong. This whole episode, I was like, here it comes, and nope. Love it how it keeps me guessing. By this time, the corporal at the listening station has figured out that every line is jammed except for the Alkenzi one. Cassian and the group take over the vault from some guards who are playing some kind of card game. Not sure what this card game is, but if one of you know, please let me know in the comments below. Nemik breaks out his navigation unit, which looks kind of like an old school Polaroid camera, as Cassian preps the ship. The rest of the team starts to load the Imperial credits, and while Nemik sends a communication over to Cinta, the listening station finally hears what's going down and they realize this is a ruse. So the corporal forms up a squad and they head over to the vault. Cinta kills the power to the station to force any incoming troops to have to take the stairs to get down to the vault. While this is all happening, the Eye in all of its glory finally happens. It's super impressive. I really love the celestial phenomena. All the special effects that they had here was really nice. As the team continues to load the ship, Lieutenant Gorn arrives and Commander Behaz finally sees how this all was allowed to happen. He says to Gorn, "You will hang for this," and Gorn says that he deserves worse for having to work under him. Again, another awesome FU moment. Meanwhile, Alkenzi Station has been alerted and we get a cool shot of the TIE fighters, a Lambda shuttle, and the Imperial pilots getting into their ships. I really love the shot of the silhouette of the Imperial pilot jumping into the cockpit against the backdrop of the celestial event. Very, very cool scene right there. Meanwhile, back at the vault, just as they're about to head out, the Imperial squad led by the corporal shows up, and after all this running around, Commander Behaz has a heart attack, and with him dropping to the floor, all hell breaks loose and a shootout commences. Lieutenant Gorn is the first to be taken out. It really wasn't a surprise to me that he got killed, but I thought he would have lasted a little bit longer. As Cassian gets the ship ready to fly, he's taken out by one of the guards, but Nemik is able to save him. Great job, Nemik. But at this point, I was like, yup, you are definitely gonna die. But then Vel gets pinned down and Terramin has to try to save her, but along the way he gets shot. Now, I wasn't expecting for him to go down, but yeah, that happened. The rest of the team makes it aboard the ship and is forced to leave Terramin and Gorn's bodies behind. Cassian kicks the ship into high gear and the thrust of it just launches everybody to the back of the ship, and a pallet of credits crushes Nemik. I yelled out at that part. You know, I knew that Nemik was going to die, but I just didn't think it was going to be that brutal, you know? So, woo! Vel gives Nemik a med spike, and I could be wrong, but this is from the Old Republic video games, I think. It's kind of like an adrenaline boost. Nemik then helps Cassian pilot the ship as it's being chased by the TIE fighters, and at this point, I am like glued to the screen, nail biting and all. What a great chase. Because of the celestial event that's going on all around them, the targeting systems on the TIE fighters are useless, and the pilots are forced to fire at the ship blindly. As Cassian navigates through it all, the TIEs are destroyed by all kinds of debris, with the last one being hit by the remainder of one of the TIE fighters, which was just epic. And all of this going on up in the skies, and all the Imperials and the Aldani can do is admire the Eye. Against Vel's thoughts on the matter, Cassian flies the ship to a doctor that can hopefully save Nemik. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen and Nemik dies. Meanwhile, outside, Skeen proposes that Cassian and him steal the money and split it between the two of them. And dude, without hesitation, Andor kills him. I was like, whoa, and this is what I really like about Cassian. This is something that I felt should have been done with Boba Fett. Like in the Boba Fett TV series, he's there being a nice criminal and trying to deal with other criminals in a nice way, which I felt was just unrealistic. Here you got a guy who is a mercenary. He's, been through stuff. He knows what to do. He knows what he's dealing with, the type of element that he's dealing with. He knows that Skeen seems to be not a good guy. And rather than to have a conversation with him and plead for him to do the good thing, he just pulls out his gun and shoots him. Gotta respect him for that. But now, since he's killed Skeen and without any witnesses, he knows that Vel will not believe his reasoning for killing him. So he shows up there with his gun out and tells him that he's gonna take his cut and the doctor's ship, but of course paying for it, and then leave. Vel doesn't believe at first that Skeen would betray them, but Andor gives back the crystal to give to Luthen, and I think that kind of wins her over a little bit, or at least makes her pause. She gives Cassian Nemec's book where something was written for him from Nemec, which I'm assuming is going to be something to inspire Cassian into doing the right thing and joining the cause. Meanwhile, back at the ISB, it's all hands on deck as Pradagast prepares a response for what has happened. You got to remember, this is probably the first major blow the rebellion has done to the Empire, so I'm really interested to see how he's going to respond to this. We then cut to a shot of Mon Mothma speaking at the Senate. And two things I noticed here. One is that almost all of the Senate seats were empty. Very sharp difference to what we saw in Revenge of the Sith, right? And in all of the prequel series. And second is that the senators that are there are distracted. So this could all be because of the events that happened on Aldhani. I'm sure this is something like a 9/11 moment for the Empire. I do think, though, that the missing senators is probably showing that Palpatine is starting to dissolve the Senate. And the distracted ones are probably reading through the reports that happened in Aldhani. Mon mentions Gormans in her speech. This is referring to what will be the Gorman massacre that will take place in 2 BBY. So this is about 3 years into the future where these events are going to happen. Mon eventually blames Palpatine for these attacks, which prompts the Empire into trying to capture her. In the final moments of this episode, we cut to Luthen's shop where Clea is talking to a customer. She mentions Devron Blue. Now, I think that this is referring to the planet Devron. Now, the species from this planet looks like devils, at least the males do. This is the character that we saw in Star Wars A New Hope in the cantina scene for the first time. As Luthen helps Clea with the customer, a man asks if they have anything available from Aldhani. Now, I really thought that this guy could be an Imperial spy that figured out that Luthen had a part in all this. It definitely put me like in a little bit of a shock. But then he just mentions about the attack over the news, and when Luthen says, "Let me check in the back," he says that he was joking. So I think that, it probably was nothing. It ends in the back with Luthen laughing. It's because of the mission's success, right? He's happy. But I wonder how he's going to take the news that some of the team members have died and that Cassian killed Skeen. Because, Vel's going to say that he did it out of cold blood. So we'll see what happens next week. So yeah, I think this was a freaking awesome episode of Andor. Probably the best episode of the season. Definitely the best episode of the season. And definitely one of the best Star Wars episodes of all time. So I really enjoyed this one. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments below. And until next time, may the Force be with you.